Hello and welcome to The Real Conspiracy News, a weekly show where I scour the internet for this past week's conspiracy news and bring it to you, the viewer, in digestible bite-sized chunks. Coming up, the US Congress holds its first UFO conference in 50 years. But first up, the World Economic Forum has just ended in Davos, Switzerland. The WEF is an annual event and it's just finished this week on the 26th of May. There were approximately 2,500 attendees from all across the world, which included political leaders, presidents, generals, big tech, big pharma, our favourite billionaires, Bill Gates and George Soros, the so-called elite. Now, us general populace, we're not allowed to enter, but as George Carlin once said,
"It's a big club, and you ain't in it."
The founder and executive chairman of the WEF is a man called Klaus Schwab, which he founded in 1971. The WEF agenda is his brainchild, and every year there's a different agenda. But in 2022, the main agenda was really around pandemic response, vaccine equity, economic recovery, climate action, climate control, technological innovation, but the main underpinning is global collaboration. Now, the WEF are mainly funded by members, and depending on your level of engagement as a member, the fees are around about €53,000 to €530,000. And when you pay your membership fee, you're then invited to the annual meeting. However, there's an extra fee to go to this meeting. Now, every one of the topics that were discussed above in the World Economic Forum highlights a real problem. What if there was a new pandemic? Should only the richest countries receive the vaccine first as they can pay the highest tariff? How is the world going to recover from this runaway inflation whilst we're on the tipping point of a global recession? The world's climate is changing. Whatever your views on climate change, whether you think it's influenced by mankind or whether you believe it's part of the Earth's life cycle over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands or even millions of years, is probably one of the most important topics of a generation. Technological advancements should be discussed. How can technology help the human race develop? So, I hear you asking, so then Craig, what's the problem? The problem is Schwab and his vision and how he's steering the WEF. In the not-so-distant past, he discussed something called the Great Reset, which is, in a post-COVID world, it was a great opportunity to hit the reset button and not return to the problems of the previous world of COVID. So, let's just have a quick look at Klaus Schwab and what he wrote about the Great Reset. This is an overall picture rather than direct quotes, but Schwab and the WF define the Great Reset in terms of the convergence of economic, monetary, technological, medical, genomic, environmental, military and governance systems. The Great Reset would mean reduced incomes and carbon use. The changes, which according to Schwab, would not only alter our world but would also lead us to question what it means to be human. And in terms of economics and monetary policy, it would involve the consolidation of wealth and the likely issuance of universal basic income. It might also include a shift to a digital currency, including consolidation, centralisations of banking, bank accounts, and centralised surveillance and control over spending and debt. How does owning digital currency, no paper money, sound? This has been discussed many times as being extremely dangerous because it gives absolute control to centralised banks and governments. If they wanted to put some restrictions in place, they could absolutely do so. Schwab also talked about what he termed the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is transhumanism. It includes the expansion of genomics, nanotechnology, robotics, and the penetrations of the human bodies and brains. He talked about the replacement of human labour to be replaced by automation. Schwab hails the use of nanotechnology and brain scans to be able to predict and preempt human behaviour. So unlike the movie Minority Report, no precogs needed, just good old-fashioned nanotech. Also, the issuance of medical passports, as well as the transparency of medical records. Does anybody remember when medical records used to be private? This would also include your medical history, genetic makeup, and disease states. But it could include the implanting of microchips that would read and report on genetic makeup and brain states that, such as if you went into a new national border, one day it might involve a detailed brain scan to assess an individual's security risk. I mean, holy crap. On the genomic front, the Great Reset also includes advances in genetic engineering and the fusion of our genetics and nanotechnology and robotics. Now, in the event to save someone's life where robotics are required, I think that might be a great idea. Maybe replacing a lost limb, an eye for example, but I don't think that's what they're intending this to be. He also said that would be a coalition of governments under a unified mission and set out policies, in particular those created by the WEF itself. Now the WEF would be world leader in control, elevated as a single point. Sounds a bit NWO-ish. We've seen a lot of what Schwab envisions already coming true. We've got Elon Musk and Neuralink, Trump talking about the US Space Force. China already do real-time tracking and facial recognition. His vision is slowly coming true. There is a problem for Schwab. He's asking billionaires to potentially bet against their own best interests. An example would be asking BT to stop oil drilling so they could use green technologies. So I can't imagine the whole time the WEF meeting is sunshine and rainbows. And potentially the WEF could be a force for good. However, I do want to show you a WEF commercial from 2016. It's 1.5 minutes, and I'll let you tell me what you think of this in the comments. So will all of you want to own nothing and be happy about it? Who gets to own everything in that case? Is it the billionaires and governments at the WEF, I wonder? Maybe it's the over 1,000 partners that those organisations pay the membership seat fees for. Organisations like Amazon, Apple, the Saudi National Bank, the Qatari National Bank. Those organisations that are completely trustworthy, treat their employees with nothing but respect and have the highest standards when it comes to human rights. Those guys. And whatever you want, you can just rent and it'll be delivered by drone, just like another billionaire at Amazon. Can you imagine a sky full of drones? The US won't be the world's leading superpower either. We can already see the shift towards China. Is this already part of the plan? A handful of countries will dominate. I wonder which of those countries will be. Could it be the countries that pay the most to the WEF? I do, however, like the next idea that organ transplants can be done via lab. This will save so many lives. I bet though it's going to cost an absolute fortune for the recipient. Then it went on to say, we will eat much less meat and it'll be the treat for the good of the planet and our health. Now, surely my health is my decision. And would it stop at just meat? Taking away autonomy of health is not up to a government to dictate. Then it said, billion people will be displaced by climate change and the expectation that countries will need to take these billion people in. This is a message of fear. The main displacement that I can see happening right now is war. But war makes money and I can't see that going away anytime soon. It then says there'll be a global price on carbon. Now, is this in addition to the existing carbon tax and carbon allowances? Whilst carbon is currently the number one enemy of the world, can we see China and India pay these extra taxes? They are the biggest carbon emitters. Then finally, how about a mission to Mars, anyone? Please step up, Mr. Elon Musk. I can't tell whether this is a prophecy of what will happen by 2030 if things don't change, or whether it's an agenda, or whether it's a mix of both. Whatever the outcome, I'm pretty sure that the majority of us don't want their version of 2030. Now, the year 2030 also mirrors another agenda set by NATO, where they want to eradicate poverty, which is something that every single one of us should be behind. But before I do go any further, I'm absolutely certain many conversations that happen at the WEF have come from a genuine place at attempting to better the world we live in. But a few comments have raised an eyebrow or two. Take a look at this video about carbon.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Measure your own carbon footprint? Where and how you travel? What you eat and consume? Whilst this is the Alibaba president Michael Evans stating this about his Alibaba platform, can you imagine the implications? Currently, organisations have carbon tax and carbon credits, and how much carbon they are allowed to produce every year. Now, it could be now done at an individual level. Each of us provided our own carbon allowance. How far are you allowed to travel? How far are you allowed to go to work? What quarter of meat are you allowed to eat? Can you imagine not being able to go on holiday because you've used all your carbon credits? In the guise of saving the planet, this has the potential to offer governments absolute control over your entire life. Remember the first video about meat being a treat? Well, what if it's carbon heavy on the environment to reproduce animals? Then maybe you won't get any at all. Cattle, mainly cows, are the cause of a lot of carbon and methane issues in the environment. Has anybody noticed recently the big push on veganism? We see part of the first video coming true already. Another video from a previous forum in 2018 comes from Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla. Listen to what he has to say.
Other questions? See one right there?
Hi there, Human Hakimi. I run the diabetes group for Medtronic. I have a question about patient engagement, and you had touched on this before. All of these advances are amazing, but even if you make the greatest drug or the greatest wearable, there's no guarantee that the patient is going to take the drug or wear the device. So how are you thinking about technology to engage the patient?
Yeah. Again, maybe I will use an example. I think it's fascinating what's happening in this field right now. I mean, FDA approved the first electronic pill, if I can call it like that. So it is basically biological chip that it is in the tablet. And once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet. So imagine the applications of that, compliance. The insurance companies to know that the medicines that patients should take, they do take them. It is fascinating what happens in this field. But of course, there will be an initial cost that someone needs to invest.
Compliance, eh? You will take your medicine. Luckily, this hasn't yet become mandatory, and I'm not sure if it ever will, nor do I know if it's part of the WEF agenda, as Bourla was simply responding to a question. He did seem quite excited by it though. However, again, think about this. All of these topics are being discussed and brought up openly by billionaires, tech and pharma companies and all these world leaders. These all tie up nicely with the Great Reset, and this is Schwab's party, remember? Finally, here's another favourite of the WEF, Dr. Yuval Noah Harari.
But some governments and corporations, for the first time in history, have the power to basically hack human beings. There is a lot of talk about hacking computers, hacking smartphones, hacking bank accounts, but the big story of our era is the ability to hack human beings. And by this I mean that if you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible. And in such a situation, the old democratic system stopped functioning. We need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. We need to come to terms with the fact that, no matter, again, this is where philosophy meets computer science and biology.
Humans, hackable and controllable, like a walking supercomputer that can just be programmed. Media's been programming us for decades, but in the future, they might not even need to bother, because our bodies will be programmed for them. The things they're talking about do absolutely need to be discussed though. The avenues of discussion over the years are dystopic and dehumanising though, the way that they're looking at bringing in the Great Reset. At least when the Bilderberg group did their meeting, they do it behind closed doors, so we don't actually have to hear the potential horror of what is to come. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Up next, Congress held their first UFO meeting in 50 years. In June 2021, the US intelligence community prepared a report for Congress, which included 144 reports on UAPs, which are unidentified aerial phenomena. Whilst the report didn't contain words such as ET or alien, senior US government officials did not rule out the possibility that future data may lead to non-Earth related technologies. Of the 144 reports we're dealing with, we have no clear indication that there is any non-terrestrial explanation for them, but we will go wherever the data takes us, he was said. He also said, we're open to other hypotheses that is meant to recognise that we have many things that are currently unexplained. We are open to the possibility that some things may be unexplainable with our current level of understanding. The report cited 18 incidents that appear to demonstrate advanced technology based upon flight characteristics. In those incidents, UAPs appear to remain stationary, move against the wind, manoeuvre abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. So, now we skip forward to May 2022, and Congress held two meetings. One was public, and there was another one behind closed doors. Expectedly, not a lot was revealed. This, in my opinion, was certainly purposeful. However, there were some nuggets left. Ronald Moultrie, the Pentagon's top intelligence official, and Scott Bray, the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, were presenters and speakers. The first interesting thing of note, though, was the intelligence officials now say there's more than 400 reports of UAPs, up from 144 last year. And remember, these are military sightings using sophisticated technology. They're not civilians in the garden with a camera phone. Now, the United States previously confirmed the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, which was a $12 million Pentagon program set up to study UFOs before it was disbanded in 2012. And this was important simply because the US did say they'd not investigated UFOs since the closure of Project Blue Book. And this was disclosed that they'd been doing this in 2012, and it was a massive bombshell in the UFO and intelligence circles at the time, so I'm glad they brought this back up. Then two videos were played to Congress. Again, as an opinion piece, these two videos I don't think were the best it could produce. This would probably just mean there's a least amount of questions and feedback to be taken from these particular videos, which is why they were chosen.
There it was. That's, in many cases, that's all that a report may include. And in many other cases, we have far less than this. As we detailed in both the unclassified and classified versions of the preliminary assessment released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence last June, this often limited amount of high-quality data and reporting hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. In this video, U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing, recorded several years ago, off the coast of the United States. This was recorded while the U.S. Navy ship observed a number of small unmanned aerial systems in the area. And importantly, the video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera. These remained unresolved for several years. Several years later, and off a different coast, U.S. Navy personnel again in a swarm of unmanned aerial systems, and again through night vision goggles and an SLR camera, recorded this image. But this time, other U.S. Navy assets also observed unmanned aerial systems nearby. And we're now reasonably confident that these triangles correlate to unmanned aerial systems in the area.
The video of the sphere is confirmed by Bray as remaining unexplained. Ronald Moultrie said that we know that our service members have encountered unidentified aerial phenomena, and because UAPs pose potential flight safety and general security risks, we're committed and focused to determine their origins. However, we have very fleeting data on these objects. Interestingly though, a bit further down the line, Scott Bray did say that there's been reports of at least 11 near misses with UAPs. Bray also added that the US hasn't attempted to communicate or fired any weapons at these objects, and we certainly don't have any unexplained wreckage. There were several questions that really didn't get an answer. Congressman Mike Gallagher quizzed intelligence chiefs on the infamous 1967 Malmstrom Air Force Base incident where it's claimed a UFO shut down 10 nuclear missiles. Captain Robert Salas has gone on record, along with a number of other nuclear weapons personnel, claiming that the UAPs had interfered with America's atomic arsenal. However, when Gallagher raised this during the hearing, Bray said that he'd not seen the official data. Gallagher then went on to say he's officially requesting an investigation. Then there was the topics of USOs, which are underwater submerged objects. Some of the most famous UFO footage we see are between UFOs that we can see moving seamlessly in the air and into the sea. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy raised the issue during the meeting, but the topic was quickly shut down. He asked if the US had any sensors designed to detect submerged objects. Moultrie said it would have to be in the classified closed sessions if we want to discuss this any further. The next thing brought up as well was, do UFOs jam weapons? Radar jamming purposefully sends radio signals which can give a receiver false data. Moultrie said during the hearing that the United States currently does not know if the UFOs are actively trying to jam US military equipment. He explained that jamming could come down to the way that the objects are being controlled using radio frequencies, so therefore it may not be intentional. But Fighter Pilot Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who encountered the infamous Tic Tac video, has previously claimed his weapon systems appear to be jammed when he tried to lock on. Another unanswered question was, if the US is experiencing a surge of UFO sightings, then surely other superpowers like Russia and China must be seeing the same. But again, when this was raised, it was said, let's have a little chat in the closed session. The meeting clearly had a lot of plausible deniability going on, and clearly didn't want to show its best evidence. We've seen so much better evidence from the military, as we've already talked about there, the infamous Tic Tac video. But I think it's important now to note that UAPs, UFOs, have now moved out of the realms of conspiracy theory and into the real national security threat. It's been taken seriously, and the possibility its disclosure may be coming. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for some more real conspiracy news.